Woohoo! Hello, we
Hap-
are live. We are the Transpositions. Hello,
Happy New
everybody.
Year.
Look at all
Happy
the
2025, peoples.
Yeah, first show of the new year and our second year now officially.
It
look
is.
how look at the audience we're starting with. Hello, beautiful people. Thank you for joining us. This is a big deal. So
Thanks
we
so
really
much.
appreciate you being here.
I'm certainly enjoying the love I'm seeing in the chat. I really always have a great time taking phone calls over on the line on Tackus and wherever, and I'm so glad you all followed us over here and found this little corner of the internet where we break news every now and again. Thanks to our intrepid correspondent, Bree McCune, our fearless leader, uh, uh, we came across this story. She came across this story last week during the broadcast. The Freedom
So
from Religion
here's something I want
Foundation.
to say real quick before we get started. I followed Jerry Coyne for years. Like this isn't like somebody new that I just discovered, right? I've followed him and kind of his fall from grace and his consorting with Emma Hilton and all
In
that
Adam's
nonsense.
fall, sinned we
Yeah,
all.
yeah, falling from being like because let's just face it, these elite professors and stuff that they always complain about.
What is it
Yeah.
with the biology guys? There's Coyne,
I
there's
don't know.
Dawkins, there's Colin Wright. Like, are
And
they
then there's
extra
that.
susceptible to brainworms?
And then
Because
there's that jerk Jay
biological
Bundy.
because biological essentialists want biology to be essential to everything about our existence and who we are. So it stands to reason that they would feel like they had a dog in the fight to keep everything about our identities and who we are as people in the realm of biology, even if it means appealing to an essence that we can't seem to pin down as an essence. It's a essence, a biological essence, your gendered essence that's there somewhere, but there's no root to it. There's no, it's not there. It's not there. But I digress.
So anyway, we came across Bree came across this story, fell into her, I guess, email at some point in time, and while Karleigh's sports segment was running, and when we come back, here we are faced with a publication on the Freedom from Religion Foundation's Free Thought blog, which was an article by Jerry Coyne, who is a biologist of some flavor, but not a
A
very well
former
informed one.
biologist.
Well, whatever. One's a biologist, and I guess he's looking in the
I,
wrong microscope. Certainly, his microscope is not well attuned to the facts of transgender people, and it's certainly not, in putting us on that microscope slide, he's not exuding compassion or empathy. Let's put it that way. So I want to just say, we are covering it this week as promised. We're covering the whole thing. That's going to be the bulk of the show. But Karleigh Chardonnay Webb is here, and she has sports. So tell us about some sports too before we get
yeah,
into
let
this
us know
other
what we're
horse
going to
shit.
be leaning into tonight, Karleigh. Unless you're not quite ready yet, in which case we'll continue on because we have a lot of show to cover.
We do. There is so much stuff. We have interviews from Hemant Mehta and Kat Grant, the author of the article that Coyne was theoretically responding to. There's good news. We have a response piece from a resident PhD biologist, evolutionary biologist, no less, as opposed to Coyne, who's an environmental biologist, Jay Bundy. And there's a lot tonight, folks.
Yes, there is. So, before we get into that, I just want to say that I reached out to the Freedom from Religion Foundation earlier today to let them know that we were going to be covering this, and that and about Ember's interview with Kat and Hemant. I sent this to them. I said, Ember Belrad, my colleague at the TransPositions, conducted interviews with Kat and Hemant Mehta on the controversy stirred by the publishing and subsequent retraction of Jerry Coyne's frightful piece in Free Thought, which we will be airing tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on our channel. This will not be a hit piece on FFRF, but rather a reflection on what responsible organizations need to do in the face of religious and other assaults on the human dignity of transgender people. Ember, myself, and Karleigh Chardonnay-Webb report weekly on the news affecting trans people in every walk of life. I wanted to reach out to you should you care to offer any further comment you'd like to make on the issue in light of developments since last Thursday evening when we first broke the story. Kind regards, Stephanie. And I received in response this from Annie Laurie Gaylor. Hi, Stephanie. Thanks for reaching out to us and for introducing yourselves in your podcast. I appreciate your contacting us in advance to let us know and that it's not a hit piece, and that it isn't a hit piece. I don't believe there's any further comment. So
we got our response, which is a pretty non-response at this point, but I imagine they have board meetings planned for after the holidays to go over how they're going to approach this.
Oh, no doubt. There's going to be a policy coming. You can't have a nonprofit without board meetings making policies. It's just the way things work. But the no comment, that I get it. You don't want to comment on something that's still up in the air, despite the fact they did publish a replacement piece that expresses we fully support LGBT rights. This is a church-state separation issue because the Christian nationalists are after everyone's rights, but it seems like the matter is still not quite settled.
Yeah, and here's the thing. This is where it sets, and I hope I don't know if anyone from FFRF is tuning into this. As I said, I don't think it's a hit piece. Here's the, at least I don't, certainly not my intent on it or anyone else's. And when you listen to these interviews, you'll see that neither Kat nor Hemant is going after FFRF. They do good work. The problem is that, in my experience, and it's a long experience, sadly, but people who aren't familiar, Karleigh, I think you're echoing here.
Right.
People that aren't familiar with the discourse would be well advised to familiarize themselves with the discourse, hopefully by having some discourse in advance with trans people.
I mean, that's one idea.
And I see some different POVs in the side chat here about FFRF's responsibility and all this, and we will parse that. There's going to be discussion about how this was handled on the editorial end of things, and where things fell apart for maybe some other organizations that don't want to throw us under the bus to follow in suit and say, hey, this is how we handle this moving forward. But
I just wanted to get that out on the table in advance, because I do think that this is a very, very common problem. I've seen it time and time again, where somebody will start to, and Arden and I touched on this on TACUS earlier. Somebody actually was from a comment, I think. Yeah, it was from a super chat. Someone saying, well, how do you feel about white knighting? Well, it's fine. There's a way to do it, and there's a way not to. If you're not familiar with the state of the art and the state of the science and the state of the conversation, you should familiarize yourself with it first.
There's not enough of us
Because-
to progress without white knights. That's what I think about white knights. And I think Arden said something like that on your all show today. That
Right.
because we're small, they're like 0.5% of the population. We're not going to make an impact without white knights standing up for us.
Yeah.
So,
And we have examples of some really terrific advocacy work on the part of cisgender people who have stood with trans people because they understand, because they have talked to us and they have seen us. That makes a difference. So
It sure does.
thank all of you here in the chat for being here with us tonight, and I hope we bring something to the table.
yeah, some journalistic integrity, because we're breaking stories here, getting exclusive interviews. So subscribe. If you're not subscribed, we're almost to 500. We almost got this thing monetized, so we can start putting some more work into bringing you all the cutting edge stuff. So please help us get there. We got just a little hump to get over. Karleigh, what do we got for sports tonight?
Well, first, before I go into sports tonight, just let's get us to 500, because you know what happens at 500? Because the money provides. Let's get to 500 so we can monetize this thing. On sports tonight, right up front, we have to talk about Sadie Schreiner. If you haven't talked about Sadie Schreiner's Instagram from Sunday, or rather from Monday, we're gonna get into a little bit to break down what happened, why it happened, and also there was a chart as part of her Instagram when she was talking about like adventures in the transfer portal, and we're going to break down what was in that chart. We're going to break that down a little bit more, and also get another understanding of how certain things are working in college sports when you're trans, because like Stephanie just said, you got to get that perspective to really understand what's going on. Also, of course, tonight we unveiled the 2024 All Karleigh team, who are my favorites this year. And a special message from me to our allies and to our community, just about how do we get through what is going to be a rough year. There's no two ways about it. We're all scared. We're all frustrated. I can understand that, but we're going to get through this thing, and we're going to get through it together. That's coming in sports. Looking forward to giving it to you. And I can tell you this much: in 2025, we're still TransPositions Sports will be here. TransPositions News will be here. And I just want to say, since we're entering into this new year, it has been an honor to fly with all three of you.
You as well, girl.
Absolutely.
All right. So, the only question I got right now, and I want to finish with Dr. Bundy, but do we want to start? Ember, do you have a preference for? I guess we only got the one video. You already got it cut. Never mind. We have the two full interviews that you can watch, and they will be available, I think, later this week on the TransPositions Patreon, so you can see the full interviews over there. We haven't got them loaded in there yet, but that's coming around.
Yeah,
these are interviews
over an hour of content, insights, behind the scenes information, that sort of stuff. Although I do promise the cut down versions that are edited for time that will air tonight contain all the pertinent information to the situation at hand.
Yeah, but if you're invested, come over to Patreon. We welcome you. You can join for as little as I believe Blaha Legion's like $1, right? There's really we got a lot of really cheap tiers that you can help support us at, and yeah. Anyway, let's get this on the road. Ember, I know that generally you stay a little bit later than this, but since we're going to be doing recorded stuff, they probably aren't going to see you again tonight. So, do you have any closing thoughts on this topic that you won't get covered in your video?
I actually have only partly watched our bit from Jay because it was late breaking content. I can probably stick around while that plays, if we have any reflections in between segments.
Excellent. Okay. Oh, I'm glad you're sticking around. That's great. But yeah, let's go ahead and get things going then. We're going to start with some good news.
Good news, everyone. Tonight, a Science Spotlight special. Buckle up. Good news starts right now. The day after Christmas, the Freedom from Religion Foundation brought us all a heck of a present. An article from another former biologist turned misinformation grifter, this one by the name of Jerry Coyne. For anyone unfamiliar, once upon a time, Jerry wrote books refuting the pseudoscientific garbage put forth by young Earth creationists and their diet version, intelligent design advocates. Unfortunately, while he still claims the things he does are in the name of science, his actions are supporting the political efforts of the very creationists and other Christian nationalists he once opposed so fervently. And worse, he's abandoned science so thoroughly to do it, the arguments he makes now resemble theirs, full of conflation, data tampering, wishful thinking, and conspiratorial reasoning. We'll get to the deficiencies in Jerry's case a little later, but first, to find out how the heck this garbage wound up on the FFRF website, I sat down with Hemant Mehta, who's been covering that very story. Today, I'm joined by the friendly atheist himself, Hemant Mehta, to discuss the controversy surrounding a rogue former professor and a nonprofit secular advocacy group. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, Ember, thank you for having me.
To set the stage, on December 26th, a blog post appeared on the Free Thought Now forum by Jerry Coyne. Jerry is another former biology guy who wrote a post full of misinformation and got the Freedom from Religion Foundation to publish it. Would you say that's about the size of it?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. It was a response to something another person who worked with FFRF directly had written like a month and a half earlier. So this was not just, it was a rebuttal to what this person had written earlier, but instead of posting it on his own website, he's thinking, well, I'm an honorary board member of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, so I should be able to ask them to publish this on their website, which is where they posted the original article. And it seemed that someone from FFRF said, yeah, I guess that makes sense. Let's go ahead and publish this.
I'm really curious if there was like any editorial review, like, can we see the article first?
Right. And this is what I've been trying to figure out for a couple days now. The person who's given us the most information on the editing process appears to be Jerry Coyne himself, and I don't think he's doing it on purpose. But it seems from him that he submitted this. It did not go through any sort of editorial oversight because he sent it directly to one of the co-presidents of the organization. She gave the final okay to have it published on their website, and it's possible. I don't want to make excuses for the organization. It's possible they just felt, well, it's one of our board members, advisory board members saying, hey, I wrote this thing in response to something you posted, without actually thinking about what it said, what the possible consequences of it were, why it might be wrong. They just said, all right, well, that makes sense. If it was about anything else, we would probably say yes. So, okay, it's a science issue. We might as well put this up there. But the point you're making is that, well, there are actual literal problems with that post that Jerry Coyne made. How come no one caught it? And that's something I'm wondering also.
When the article came out the day after Christmas, what was your initial reaction?
I was surprised FFRF posted it, but I'm not surprised Jerry Coyne said it because I've followed his work for a number of years, and what I've seen from him over the past couple of years on his own website is he very much just has a habit of regurgitating right-wing talking points. Most of his blog is, hey, this Republican wrote something I found very interesting. So instead of sharing like a small little excerpt, he's like, here's the entire essay for you. it's written by this anti-trans person or this anti-trans person. And if he had just posted this essay on his website, honestly, I'm not sure it would have made many waves because I don't even know who reads it these days. The fact that it got published through FFRF is what bothered me. And then when I actually read through what he wrote, it was more damning than just the headline.
Jerry's article was published with a disclaimer that normally doesn't appear on FFRF posts.
Yeah,
so
the disclaimer said, the views of our guest posts do not necessarily reflect the views of FFRF. And my understanding, talking to some people, is that this was in the works. They were going to start putting this disclaimer on any guest posts. It just so happened that Jerry's piece was the first one that disclaimer got appended to. He thinks that's not a coincidence. As far as I can tell, yeah, it really was a coincidence.
do you think it's necessary for secular organizations to have to take a stand for or against specific human rights one by one?
Right. I mean, that's a fair question. And it's the question I've been seeing a lot of. Like, is this mission creep? Why is FFRF, an atheist organization, a church-state separation organization, taking a position on trans issues anyway? And the argument I would make there is, look, if you look at what the religious right is doing, if you look at what Republicans are doing, when they propose or pass anti-LGBTQ laws or anti-abortion laws, every single time they justify it by pointing to the Bible. Religious conservatives have made LGBTQ rights and reproductive rights. They have made those religious issues, and they are getting their way. They are passing those laws because of the religious support they have. And so if you are a church-state separation organization, those issues are your issues now, whether you like it or not. And I think for any organization that takes not just atheism, but religion in government issues seriously, you have to fight back against this. These organizations need to fight back against it, not just because it's the morally correct position to take, but because the argument to get those bills passed, those anti-trans bills passed, are coming from a place of Christianity is true and we must put it into law.
Why do you think we keep having to react to the Coyneses and the Dawkinses? And by that, I mean, why do they get to frame the discourse, often with talking points that coincidentally mirror Christian nationalist rhetoric? Why do they get to lead, and how do we fix it?
It's a wonderful question. I think the answer is a couple things. One is, if you go back 15, 20 years when the new atheism was blowing up and people outside our type of circles were discussing atheism, they were the ones who were popularizing it, who wrote the books that sold so many copies, got the public discourse going about atheism. And the thing that bothers me is, even today, if there is a mainstream news article about atheism in any variety, those reporters still want to get a quotation from Richard Dawkins or Steven Pinker or Jerry Coyne. That's why it's important to push back against what those guys are doing now, because they are still the public faces of atheism. That's why I feel obligated to push back when they do something stupid. How do we solve this? More people speaking out against it. And I hope more people who have a platform putting out this information and bringing on other voices who are eloquent to speak out against it too. How do you combat when someone popular who used to work with your cause turns out to be horrible? I mean, there's no simple solution to that, because you can't just say like, well, everyone should be talking to this person instead. But that's why it's important for the organizations who have clout and money and members to push back against it. If you're a social media person who has followers, it's important to push back against it, because that's the way you change the culture and the dialogue and the way people are talking about this.
It's a start for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Hemant Mehta, thefriendlyatheist.com, and on YouTube. Thank you for sharing your perspective with us.
Thank you for asking me. I appreciate it.
Here's a quick reminder that FFRF was founded by Anne and Annie Gaylor in 1976 after a split with American atheists over that organization's anti-Semitism. So FFRF is literally founded on humanist principles for the express purpose of championing civil rights, which Coyne's article is directly antithetical toward. He opens his post by claiming it is a direct response to a previous article posted by FFRF contributor and civil rights attorney Kat Grant. So to get a complete picture of what was going on, I interviewed them on the situation. Today I'm joined by Kat Grant, who, among many other things, wrote an article for the Freedom from Religion Foundation's Free Thought Now forum, which apparently was the cause of the Jerry Coyne incident that we've been discussing this week. First things first, Kat, you wrote your article back in November that Jerry claims his post was in response to. Could you summarize what your article was about?
Basically, back in November, I put out a blog that was just kind of poking fun and also explaining the problem with this whole what is a woman, define a woman debate. I minored in classics, so I used the classic Diogenes, hold up a plucked chicken and say, behold a man story. And I go in and I start talking about how trying to define womanhood on any number of terms, but especially on biological terms, is a quote unquote biological, at least, is always going to exclude someone you're not intending to exclude or include someone you are not intending to include. And this made Jerry Coyne and some other members of FFRF's honorary board very upset. They felt that I was flouting biology and flouting science, and they wanted an opportunity to rebut it and to respond.
Why do you think Jerry targeted that specific post? Because it's not particularly inflammatory, especially compared to your other work, is it?
I won't say I didn't think it was inflammatory, because I knew it was going to upset some people. All of my work upsets people, but I knew diving into the what is a woman argument was going to upset some people. Every time I write something, basically, Jerry Coyne goes on his blog, which I should point out, he has his own blog. He did not need FFRF's forum. He, alongside Richard Dawkins and a few other people, because they are trying to maintain relevance in a world that philosophically has moved past their particular brand of atheism, they've jumped onto the anti-trans grift. And I think he saw, oh, I'm a biologist, I can talk about biology. And he then proceeded to write this bizarre blog. Like, I know it's somewhere on the Internet Archive now, even though it's been deleted. It is truly astoundingly, if it weren't for how dangerous the rhetoric in it is, it would be almost comedic.
It's so wild seeing somebody like Jerry Coyne, who made his career on pushing back against creationist pseudoscience, now turning around and using the same techniques and arguments against human rights.
Yeah.
It blows my mind.
I saw someone describe the Jerry Coyne of it all as, over the past several years, Jerry Coyne getting love-bombed by the conservative right and him eating it up and completely buying into it and feeling that he can do no wrong and that he is the antithesis of intelligence and knows everything about everything because he has a PhD in biology.
Do you think that he addressed your points fairly in his piece?
No. He fully just made up assertions that I did not make. He did not engage. It's quite telling that for all of his ranting about mission creep for FFRF, about how FFRF needs to stay out of gender politics and focus on areas of religion and, state-church separation, which I'll get to the state-church separation of it in a moment. But he does not address my argument at all about the Christian colonialism of our understanding of gender hierarchies and gender binaries. He completely skips over that section, does not address it whatsoever. He starts talking about how I'm like denying that gametes exist. And then as he's talking about mission creep and asking, I fail to see how all of this gender stuff and trans issues has anything to do with state church separation of the First Amendment, then he really steps out of his area of expertise and directly into mine. I am one of a small handful of attorneys that works directly at the intersection of state church separation and LGBT rights. Take one look at the statements that Trump has been making recently. He was just recently gave a talk at Turning Point where he said that day one of his administration, he's going to end the gender lunacy in the United States. You are seeing bills across the United States entitled Millstone Acts, which are a biblical reference. It is explicitly Christian nationalism. It is explicitly an issue of state church separation. It is explicitly an issue of theocracy. So the fact that he's like, well, I don't understand why you're talking about this, and this is mission creep, and FFRF doesn't need to be doing this, is so completely ignorant of the point of all of my work, not just that one blog, but also the world and political situation that we live in.
It has been a controversial time. It has been a firestorm of reactions in the community, both for and against. And FFRF had to come out and publicly state they do support civil rights for everybody. Do you think this is overall a net good that this happened?
Yes, I think it is launching conversations that have needed to happen. And that's the thing is, if it wasn't this blog, it would have been something else. This was a powder keg getting ready to explode. People are seeing the mask being taken off. And so I think that has been really good and really important. There are a lot of discussions being had right now about what is and is not acceptable, what the boundaries are. I do think that this was ultimately a good thing in that, the level of influence that is going to be wielded by some of these people is going to be greatly diminished.
Jerry Coyne closed his essay by asserting, I am about as far as one can get from being a Christian nationalist. Why do you imagine he felt he needed to say that?
Because in my blog, I say that, transphobia and the transphobic project right now is a hallmark piece of Christian nationalism that, and it's also a key part of fascism. And, I go into the fact that there are a lot of atheists that are transphobic specifically because they have not deconstructed their problematic views surrounding gender and sex and sexuality that they still hold on to from their previous days as being religious. I see this especially with ex-evangelicals, that there are a lot of people who stop believing in God and then go no further. And they still proselytize, they still try to convert people, and they still hold a lot of their problematic social theology. But I think it's also because we are seeing continuing data that shows that you can be a Christian nationalist without being a Christian. There are Christian nationalist atheists.
There's a whole organization of them.
Yes. Who I'm sure, Coyne is probably already in conversations with. And then he goes, I'm not transphobic and think that trans people should have rights. Just also, I think that they're sexual predators that don't believe in science. He clearly knows he's wrong. I think that's his entire concluding statement. He clearly knows that he's wrong. You can't just add a concluding statement at the end and be like, but I'm not transphobic. It's like, that's not how it works. Like, talk about denying objective reality.
Kat Grant, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts Where can people find you if out on the wild interwebs?
If people want to find more of my writing, I just launched a blog on Substack called Transing Boundaries, where I write about religion. I'm going to be writing about Catholicism, theology, law, public policy, kind of anything right now, because I apparently was not, I didn't get enough of internet wrath from pissing off the atheist bros. I am currently working on a piece about the connections between tech bros and theo bros. So that will be coming out soon. You can find me at Blue Sky at Kat Dean, KatDene, or on TikTok at Chuckle Lemon. That's Chuckle Lemon, no spaces in between, but there are lots of L's and E's in there, so good luck for at least as long as TikTok still exists.
Fair. Yeah. All right. Thank you. After pointing at Kat's piece as justification for his screed, Jerry laments the, quote, remarkable redefinition of a term with a long biological history. Keep that in mind because, spoilers, he's going to completely undermine his own premise later. He spends the next paragraph trotting out a stable of the standard PragerU straw men, comparing trans people to anorexic people, Therians, and, ironically, a grifter on his own team, Ollie London. This is what you might call a bait and switch. He's attempting to dispute the empirical validity of gender identity by refuting the validity of completely unrelated things. Badly. Next he states, quote, why should sex be changeable while other physical traits cannot? One must note that, 1, that's not a coherent sentence. 2, aren't other physical traits changeable? Do infants not change into adults? Do we not offer corrective procedures for a whole array of physical traits for health or quality of life? Have you ever heard of a haircut, Jerry, where the physical trait of hair length is altered? 3, what does the changeability of one thing have to do with the changeability of any other thing? 4, sex is changeable, depending on how you mean sex. Weird that you haven't made clear in what sense you're using that term, Jerry, but that's a whole topic unto itself. One you might expect a biologist would be familiar with. But to save time, let's just pull a delightfully ironic phrase from the apologist's playbook and suggest we look at the trees. Here we have a tree changing sex, a thing that is known to happen and not at all surprising to biologists. Huh. Now, you might be thinking, surely Jerry's talking about sex in humans specifically. He just worded it unintelligently. Put a pin in that, too. Next, Jerry throws in a total non sequitur. Quote, feelings don't create reality. We can just grant this because it has no bearing on anything being discussed and seems to be included only as a dog whistle or a warning label for propaganda content. After that, Jerry says, quote, in biology, sex is traditionally defined by the size and mobility of reproductive cells. First, that's not true. Here's evolutionary biologist Forrest Velkai to explain.
There are lots of ways that we define sex. The most common is gamete size, but that's not the only way. And not a single way that we define sex has only 2 exclusive options.
Second, remember when I asked you to keep in mind Jerry's earlier assertion that this subject amounts to, quote, remarkable redefinition of a term with long biological history? How long have we known about the size and mobility of human reproductive cells? Would you say this long biological history dates back to the dawn of writing, from whence we have artifacts that expressly speak about men and women as different categories of humans? Do you suppose the ancient Sumerians were pulling out microscopes to check the germ cells of people to determine if they are male or female? Obviously not. So Jerry's central premise that he's defending the long biological history of sex equals gametes and nothing else is completely undone by his own hand. Instead, it is revealed that he himself is engaging in what he called a remarkable redefinition by trying to replace the actual historical categories of men and women as people who possess entire suites of characteristics with a single trait that has nothing to do with their personhood, one that nobody actually uses to make such determinations. Talk about trying to erase biological reality. As neurobiologist Stephen Novella wrote in an article specifically about Coyne's gametes-only approach, the only reason for a position of such practical uselessness is because all the other ways biologists define sex make it clear how absurd Coyne's claims, and other gender-critical conspiracy theorists like him, really are in very short order. To illustrate how there are a wide array of factors involving sex in reality, Novella describes the situation of a human with complete androgen insensitivity syndrome. He writes, there are people who have XY chromosomes, produce male levels of testosterone, and produce sperm. But since they do not respond to testosterone, they develop along the female body plan. They have vaginas, a complete suite of female secondary sexual characteristics, and typical female neurological development. They have male genetics, hormones, and gametes, but female genitalia, body, and brain. So are they male or female? Do some men have vaginas, or do some women have XY chromosomes? This is just one example of the diversity that exists in the human species. I'm another. I'm a genetic chimera with half of my cells containing XX chromosomes and half containing XY. Geneticists estimate we make up about 10% of the human population. Hardly a rarity, but that's a topic for another time. The point is, of course, that when dealing with people in society, we consider only the factors we can be made aware of. That's why we give weight to aspects with practical utility, like gender expression, which Jerry's case completely fails on. If one is speaking in strictly academic terms, which Jerry clearly is not, then his argument is still incorrect, because biologists do consider the entire suite of characteristics. That's why the category of intersex exists. Biologists certainly didn't create the term because of the gametes we produce, did they, Jerry? But it's even worse than that for Jerry, because we've caught him double dealing here. Remember that pin I asked you to keep about the possibility Jerry may be talking about humans in particular here? He dispels that for us now. He goes on to write about all animals and vascular plants collectively, adds details for the various kinds of gametes and how they're analogous, and declares them all as having two sexes exclusively. And then immediately debunks his own statement by pointing out some animals have only one sex and are capable of producing both types of gametes. The point isn't that he drank so much conspiracy Kool-Aid he doesn't even notice when he undermines his own argument in the argument itself. It's that he clearly isn't referring only to humans. Next, he goes on to generously allow that intersex people do exist, despite the fact we don't produce intergametes, which obliterates his own argument again, but asserts that such a tiny fraction of exceptions shouldn't be allowed to disrupt his nice and orderly binary-only model that he just admitted does not describe reality. By that logic, we shouldn't let pesky details like the actual shape of the Earth disrupt our simple and elegant model of a flat disk under a dome. If there are exceptions, there aren't two exclusive options. That's first law of logic, A equals A obvious. Dismissing the exceptions as minuscule in number doesn't change their existing. As Jerry randomly said earlier, feelings don't create reality. We can't pretend the periodic table is binary just because hydrogen and helium make up over 99% of the universe. The carbon and oxygen and such are kind of important. More to the point, the exceptions in human sex are hardly minuscule. There are more intersex people than redheads. Additionally, and obviously, gender isn't the same as sex. While both have spectra, gender is nothing but a spectrum. I like to point to the myriad men versus women videos right here on YouTube. Often these will put the men in blue-colored shirts and the women in red ones. But you'll notice the shirts range in color. There is a spectrum even within each category. And there is a spectrum between those categories, the various hues and shades of purple. And there are colors entirely outside those categories, like yellow and green. But Jerry is standing here telling you, no, it's only blue and red. And despite what you were seeing with your own eyes, there is only one shade of each, absolute blue and absolute red. No spectra anywhere. What a sad view, because it misses the wonder of the real diversity that exists in life. But also, what a dangerous view, because all too often in our history, it has led to the purging of individuals who don't neatly fit, not just into the pretend binary, but into the precise parameters of whatever's arbitrarily decided to be the absolute true hues of blue or red. On that note, it is perhaps fitting that Jerry next quotes from Matt Walsh. You know, the Christian nationalist and self-declared fascist. The guy who openly evangelizes Third Reich ideology for entirely religious reasons. The personification of everything the FFRF stands against and why standing against religiously motivated hate-based legal action is necessary. Jerry writes, in biology, a woman can be defined simply in 4 words: an adult human female. There are lots of problems here, right-wing dog whistles aside. For one thing, woman isn't a biological term, but a social one. For another, if brevity is the hallmark of a superior definition, then 2 words are twice as correct as 4. A woman is a category. A category we made up, by the way. As Kat Grant mentioned and Jerry failed to address, lots of cultures have created lots of gender categories in all kinds of ways for all manner of reasons depending on their needs and traditions as a society. More cultures have had more than 2 genders than not, including early Christianity. That also includes the ancient text we mentioned a moment ago, by the way, the one that spoke of gender without reference to gametes. It also spoke of males who became women and females who became men. That's right, transgender people have existed far longer than humans have even been aware of gametes, or chromosomes, or science for that matter. We are older than written history. So spare me the argument from tradition, Jerry. He then goes on to write, seemingly with no sense of self-awareness whatsoever, quote, dismissal of trait-based concepts of sex leads to serious errors and misconceptions. Why, yes, that is actually true. It is a fact that Jerry's dismissal of all other traits that contribute to biological concepts of sex have led him to some serious errors and misconceptions both. Jerry also throws in some random transphobia, just in case it wasn't clear how he feels, calling trans women specifically, quote, men who identify as women. He's shadowboxing. Men, virtually everyone agrees, are not women. It's so weird when other transphobes like Frank Turek say we say that when here's his guy Jerry being the one who is literally saying that. Jerry, that is an incoherent, self-contradictory statement that fails on multiple levels. In the words of Richard Feynman, it's not even wrong. He goes on to misrepresent a single set of prison statistics to paint trans women as not just violent, but the most violent category of person ever in human history by far. The sure sign of a rational thought process? A bit of advice. If you're intent on dishonesty, maybe don't make it so obvious you're confabulating. He delves into sports, which isn't my specialty. I'll only note here that he cites a UN report, itself more than a little problematic, but blatantly alters a quote. The report, which includes citations from exclusively anti-trans organizations like Maya Forstatter's Sex Matters and known hate groups like WLF, reads, according to information received, quote, the replacement of the female sports category with a mixed sex category has resulted in an increasing number of female athletes losing opportunities. And then lists a bunch of numbers with no context. That information received, by the way, is attributed to WLF. A hate group said something totally unverified and with no context to make verification possible, but as long as there's a citation, that makes it good enough to present as if it were a fact in a UN report, huh? That aside, this section is talking about replacing sex-segregated sports with co-ed categories. Jerry, however, couldn't help himself from altering it. What he wrote was female athletes have lost a number of medals to transgender women. That's not what the quote was talking about. Jerry just put that bit about transgender women in there. Did he not think anyone would check? After all that, Jerry makes the assertion he believes, quote, transgender people should surely enjoy all the moral and legal rights of everyone else. Of course, he then follows it with a litany of exceptions. All the rights, except for all the rights. Immediately contradicting himself seems to be a theme for Jerry. Again, conspiracy theory. Finally, he says, he's worried that FFRF's incursion into activism takes it outside of its mission, and we shouldn't waste time and effort talking about it. That's not the case he made, though. He could have written about how he thinks civil rights shouldn't be a function of secular advocacy, but he didn't do that. He made a case taking a position on a civil rights issue instead, one that just so happens to be the focus of Christian nationalist efforts to force theology into law. And he did it on their side. He does leave us with something to laugh about, though. At the end, he writes this, quote, as a liberal atheist, I am about as far from Christian nationalism as one can get. I don't know what you think a liberal is, Jerry. Given the understanding of terminology you've demonstrated in this post, I can't even begin to guess at what you might think that word means. But when you're quoting Christian nationalist propagandists uncritically, when you're repeating the talking points of conspiracy theorists backed by Christian nationalist funding, making the very same arguments as the Christian nationalist creationists you once stood against, to put it in terms you might understand, the intellectual gametes you're trying to spread have Christian nationalist chromosomes. How you identify doesn't alter that reality. But since this is good news, you know there is good news to be found here. Within 24 hours, FFRF retracted that pseudoscience failure of a hit piece and replaced it with a statement affirming that FFRF does stand for civil rights for all, precisely because one of the primary tools of religious oppression is the regressive effort to strip marginalized groups of their basic human rights, such as a woman's right to reproductive health care, gay people's right to marry, or trans people's right to exist. It's all bodily autonomy, whether you have the right to live your life in your own body or whether they have the right to make you live in a certain way because their favorite book of mythology says so. To be clear, there are women who participate in religion. There are gay people and BIPOC people and even trans people who participate in religion. We have one on our core team at the TransPositions. Religion itself isn't the issue. It's people using religion as a weapon to try to force others to live in a certain way that we cannot. It's a misapplication of religion, an abuse of power, and an abuse of the trust people of faith have placed in their leaders. Religious folk who realize this have common cause with us. The author of the original article, Kat Grant, is a practicing Catholic, for example. Religious folks should hate seeing their sacred beliefs twisted in this way just as much as we do. While FFRF is certainly going to take damage from this debacle, it is a threshold in the growth of any organization that has to be crossed. It is necessary that the core values of the group be clarified from time to time. While FFRF was founded in opposition to anti-Semitism, many seem to have forgotten that it was the same sort of religiously motivated hate we see today directed towards gender and sexual minorities that sought to dehumanize ethnic Hebrew people back then. It has always been about freeing us all, secular and religious alike, from cultural domination by people attempting to abuse religion for power. FFRF passed this crisis with their values intact. And in an age when organization after organization follows the money and power instead of the science or the humanist principles they were founded on, that is very, very good news. Finally, I've alluded in multiple places throughout that there is more than a self-perception to gender identity. Psychological treatment has never yielded positive outcomes, but gender health care has, overwhelmingly so, for cis and trans people alike, and to a degree unparalleled in any other area of healthcare. That's why every major medical body on the planet supports gender-affirming care. The names on the list scrolling by are just a portion of the associations in the US alone. To suggest all of them are somehow in on some grand conspiracy isn't just a mirror of the flat earth claim that NASA is lying about the shape of the earth, but far surpasses it in scope and scale. To be blunt, this is a conspiracy theory that is even more ridiculous than flat earth. Beyond that, neurologists like Stephen Novella, Robert Sapolsky, and too many others to list have found considerable evidence in the brain that there are physical structures linked to gender self-perception. Others, like evolutionary biologist Joan Roughgarden, have demonstrated what we might call transgender behavior exists in a vast array of species, not just actual sex changes like certain plants and animals undergo, but physical and social transformations without alteration of reproductive organs, like the trans lions who make the news every so often. This is Mamoriri, a lion with male morphology and a female reproductive system who started out as a lioness and transitioned. He lives in the wilds of Botswana, and he is far from unique. Many lions, in the wild and captivity alike, have transitioned all on their own with no ideology to be found. We're even making progress in genetics research. That's the work I'm doing. This is a long piece, though, so to find out more about that, check out the genetics research link on the front page of my website, betterthanember.com. The obvious reality is that all the evidence from every scientific discipline seems to be converging on a common conclusion. Being trans is anything but merely a mental condition. So-called gender criticalism is a conspiracy theory, just like Flat Earth or 9/11 truthers. It can fake a facade of legitimacy through pseudoscience, but doesn't hold up long against the real thing. Don't fall for conspiracy theories, folks. Don't make a fool of yourself like Jerry. For the TransPositions, I've been Ember Belrad.
Good evening. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Dr. J. Bundy, and I just first off want to say what an honor it is to be on the TransPositions, no matter what the reason. Show hosted by three of my favorite people, Steph, Bree, and Ember, just three of my good friends, and I'm so happy to see them have this show. It's so awesome. And I can't say enough great things about Karleigh Webb and all the amazing work she does. And this is one of the few shows that I think is worth the destination viewing every week. would love to be here for something else, but I've been asked to address the blog made by Dr. Jerry Coyne. And I've been asked to do so because of my expertise in ecology and evolution. I am an evolutionary biologist by profession. I teach biology and run an experimental evolution lab. I have a dual PhD in ecology, evolutionary biology, and behavior, as well as integrative biology. And I also have a master's degree in biological anthropology, working in a lab that's specialized in the evolution of human sexuality. I wrote my master's thesis on sexual selection in men's voices, and spent several years teaching a class called Sex and Evolution, which included reviewing sort of the biology research and how we know what we know about human sexuality from a biological perspective, and also including what we know about the diversity in gender and how we know that. And I just want to say a few things briefly. First off, Dr. Coyne and others like him who have tried to represent biology, the biology of human sex, as coming down to just one particular aspect of our biology, be that gametes, other times it will be chromosomes, but all of that is wrong. Sex is an incredibly complex phenomena in biology, and you need to take in the full spectrum of an organism's traits if you want to even begin to understand that picture. And in our case, that includes, yes, some things about our gametes, and it includes information about some genetic thing like our chromosomes or particular genes, aspects of our behavior, our sort of endocrinology and our hormone profile, and just a lot of other things like behavior and things like that, that we might have different experiments out of ways to sort of test what we might think of as innate behavior that we can see sex differences in. But we know in all cases that we are, as scientists, coming up with language that helps us describe the system, in this case, human beings and the sex of human beings. We don't mistake the map for the territory and believe that the conventions of language that we come up with, or some shortcuts that we may use to describing groups of people that, you know, have similar traits or behavior, or we expect similar things from, that is just a convenience of the profession of needing to talk about large groups of people in a way that is practical. But it's more important to me to recognize that these people know that they're wrong, and they are being used for their expertise and their background to put a PhD with the appropriate field of expertise as someone giving credence and authority and sort of a scientific backing to what is bigotry. The title of the piece was "Biology is Not Bigotry," and essentially the science of biology should not necessarily be deemed bigotry, but that piece is absolutely bigoted. And the people who continue to put these narratives into public spaces know that. And they are bigots. And they are using biology as a cover for their bigotry. It is part of a larger problem in society of people weaponizing pseudo-intellectual pursuits especially academic scholarly pursuits, to give a veneer of legitimacy to what is really just outright bigoted behavior, in this case, transphobia. I want to speak to a couple things that are challenging for me in thinking about what happened. The first is people like Jerry Coyne need to be held accountable for putting out misinformation about biology and for using their expertise in a way that is weaponized against other people. And there is research that demonstrates that these narratives, which I consider to be narratives of what we sometimes call gender essentialism, or representing sex as a binary, and all of this, of course, is often included with heteronormativity, and just some other things that they reify stories about who humans are. And that is exactly what they are. They are stories. And when you go reaching for scientific verification of a story, you're already doing it wrong. But more importantly, people get hurt. And so it is really alarming to me to see this trend, because it is not just Jerry Coyne, it is Richard Dawkins and others, of people who have achieved certain success and legitimacy as scientists, particularly who are now retired, who don't have the same sort of accountability and sort of hooks. Like there's a certain degree of, I need, as an active scientist and an active academic and an active professor, I need to stay up on what's going on in my field, and I need to represent my field accurately. I need to filter out what's bad, and I need to only take in what's really, really good research to help me move forward as a researcher and an instructor, and I need to only produce what's really, really good to be rewarded as a teacher and as a researcher. And those constraints are not in place anymore with some of these retired people. And it is now a problem because they wait till they get retired to all of a sudden start saying things with their scientific credentials behind them that they would not have been able to get away with saying so easily if they were still active researchers and teachers and actively bound by standards and practices of institutions. So that is a problem. But overall, I can't stress this enough. We know these narratives harm people. And to speak to like one of them directly, I would make it about our job. We know it harms people and that should concern us, but we also specifically know it harms students, particularly biology students. And I'm going to link to a paper called It's Complete Erasure. And a number of colleagues of mine actually were fortunate enough to work on that paper, and that's how I learned about it. But I've shared it with people in the community. I'm going to share it in response to this. But it outlines the harm that these narratives cause to students in biology, and it makes them not pursue biology as a career, to not be interested in the content of biology, and to really feel that biology invalidates them. So we have a responsibility to counteract that. We have a responsibility to portray sex and gender accurately and in a way that is inclusive, because we understand that these narratives, these stories have no place in our field, and they have no place in our classroom, and they are inherently not just wrong and inaccurate, but they are exclusionary. So there is a way in which men like Coyne and Dawkins and other people who do this are really failing the essential responsibility of being a biology educator. And we know this is harming students in biology. Further, I want to talk about this show, and I want to talk about this community, because part of what you'll read about in that paper is that students respond with resiliency. They don't just give up. They don't just go away. Those that choose to stay find a way to make it. And part of the way they do that is they go to resources like the TransPositions, where they can learn the truth, where they can get accurate information, and where they can be accepted and validated. So we have to support this show, because this show is it's about much more. And there will be many more unfortunate incidents like this. And yes, we can expect even more like this from the atheist, quote unquote, community, because that community is, in a sense, it's just atheism, y'all. And so it's just a reflection of our society at large, except the atheist subsection. But that's it. And so we've seen time and time again that we can't count on the atheist community to do what is right by marginalized community within that space. So we have to support shows like the TransPositions so that, one, they can continue to do the work of responding to things like this, but two, so that future people who are looking for resources who deal with these harmful narratives can find something like the TransPositions and have it in their arsenal to help build them up and to learn and to get access to community. And the second part is also where the rest of us come in, because finding that community and building what are called counter spaces is really important to building people's resilience to these harmful narratives. So even if you're just someone who is viewing these streams and watching these shows, you are helping. But the more and more you engage in the community, the more you help. If you are engaging in the chat and you're encouraging the creators and you're getting to know other people and you're encouraging them, you are helping. If you are part of the Discord and you are engaging in the chat offline and the sharing of papers and the sharing of resources and helping keep up on the news and sharing links, you are helping build community. Obviously, if you're like part of the Gather gang and you're, just getting to know these people off air and offline and becoming part of their real life and becoming part of their real support network and being there to provide mutual aid when we know there's a need that we can meet. I just can't stress enough, because I don't want this to be all about them. I don't want this to be all about responding to the hate. I want it to be, what do we know? What do we have evidence that we can do to help to make it better? And so I wanted to stress building resilience and supporting this show and supporting counter spaces and supporting the community. The other thing I'll say quickly is that I see all of this as a challenge to me personally and other people in my field. I know y'all didn't try to make it about us, and I'm not trying to make it about us, but the reality is our science is being used to harm people. And it's not just LGBTQ people. We see this with lots of inaccurate uses of biology. And we see the same thing with like evolution and creationism, where yes, as scientists, as the evolution side, we have the research on our side. We have the evidence. In a sense, we know that we're right. But we have failed to answer the challenge. And the other side continues to grow. They continue to build. They continue to be well funded. They continue to get their message out there. And so to me, the question was, we know these narratives are harming people and we know they're inaccurate, but as scientists and as educators, what are we going to do about it? And I'm afraid that for far too many of us, the answer is nothing, because we think having the research and having the evidence is enough, but it is not. We are in a fight. And these people are weaponizing our science to hurt people we care about, like our friends, our family, our loved ones, and our students. So are we just going to sit back and say, oh, well, you know, if you really look into it, well, if you really read about it, well, if you really do the research, then you'll find this, or that? No, we have to take it to the streets. We have to tell people we know this is going on and it's wrong, and we have to bring the same energy to helping people and to getting the good information out there that these other people bring. We can't just sit by and think that we'll win out because we have the evidence. We can't be that silly. History teaches us time and time and time again that that will not work. This has been a tough one. This has been really difficult, y'all, but there will be more like this, and we need to be ready and we need to understand how to handle these things. I really appreciate being included in this process. I do think if we're going to try to bring some resolution to this situation, there needs to be deep accountability. Let me throw in one more thing I observed that I think is really important. There was an initial article or blog that Jerry Coyne was responding to. And then after the backlash of Jerry Coyne's article, and it should be noted, after the backlash, they took the article down. But many of us want to know, what is your response going to be? What are you going to do? And yes, they issued a statement with apology and, you know, terms making it sound like they support the LGBTQ community and they feel bad about what happened, particularly as it relates to the harm this does to trans people. But again, what are you going to do about it? Because he went on his platform where he could go to talk to his audience, and he made it clear that this was approved and that all the way to the top of the organization, leadership was on board with this. So what does that look like? My point is, we have to hold people accountable, because people are receiving this stuff or going out looking for these people, and they have it in their head that they're doing a service to people by both sidesing this and going to people who you should know better. You should know when you read something like this, when you put it out there, you put a disclaimer at the top talking about how the opinions included don't reflect the opinions of the organization. If you got to put a disclaimer like that at the top of the blog, you already know you shouldn't be publishing it. But now you have a ton of backlash for pulling the article. And you got to make a stand. And you got to pay the cost. Because it seems like the organization wants to have it both ways. They want to appeal to, I'm gonna just call it the Atheists for Liberty crowd, the Eileen Wright, or whoever the libertarian types, whoever these people think they are, and these people are serious about theirs. And then you want to appeal to the people that they're harming with their BS. And you want to make both these crowds happy, and you stepped in it. But you stepped in it knowing this was exactly what you were getting into, and it really seeming like you wanted to get into it, and you wanted to go find one of these professional transphobes to so you could put it out there under your banner with their expertise and backing. So to me, there has to be more accountability than just we took it down and we're sorry. No, you have to fundamentally address how and why this happened. And I'm sorry, but heads need to roll till we make sure stuff like this doesn't happen again. And this is the mistake I wanted to bring up. Because from what I read, when you look up Dr. Coyne's webpage, it says he resigned. He resigned his position from the board because he disagrees with y'all about withdrawing his statement. Do y'all see the problem? Instead of saying he was wrong, we was tripping, we gave him the boot, and we gonna have to really have a sit down and review the leadership in our organization and figure out what happened, because to me, that's not really how y'all felt. Y'all wanted to step into it thinking you was gonna look cool. There was a lot of heat and backlash. Then you pull it down, but now you don't really know what to do. So now he steps away and makes it look like, again, he's grandstanding on you. He's taking a stand. He is doubling down on his transphobia, and it makes it look like he was in a position of power to walk away from you. This is what I mean. This is a problem because you're not expressing a full commitment to being on the right side of history and doing the right thing and holding people accountable. They look like they're holding you accountable. So this is why this is such a challenge to me, y'all. What are we going to do about it? To sum it up, y'all, they're wrong about the biology. Sex in humans is an incredibly complex phenomena. And if we're going to be real, it is distinct from gender, but not, you can't easily separate these things out, nor should we want to, because it's part of the great variation and diversity that is a human being. And as evolutionary biologists and ecology people, we know people like Dr. Coyne and Richard Dawkins know that evolution is all about the variation within a population. We never reduce things down to the norm or the average. Those are statistical concepts. And these men know better. So the question to other people in my field is, we know they're harming people. What are we going to do about it? And the challenge for organizations in this atheist space is you have to take an honest accounting of your leadership, your membership, your audience, and you have to decide where you really stand, who you're really willing to fight for, and then you need to throw some punches. For the Transpositions, I'm Dr. J. Bundy.
Well, friends, Ember stuck around for this one too. Hello. So thank you so much, Dr. J. Bundy,
Yeah,
for
Jay,
your
that was great.
contribution. it's wonderful that we were able to get our own evolutionary biologist in the folds to come on here and address some of this stuff that maybe we're not qualified to, or not. If, like Dr. Ben was saying in the side chat, they maybe an evolutionary biologist needs to have another evolutionary biologist rebutting and responding to them directly.
Hey, I typed in the side chat. I was tearing up there. Tonight this is something we've never had on the Transpositions before. We've had an interview with Hemant Mehta, and the full interview that Ember did with Hemant will be on our Patreon, along with the interview that Ember did with Kat. But this is something we've never done before. We haven't had allies. We haven't given allies a platform here. And
we gave Maya Ember interviewed Maya about intersectionality.
That's true.
But yeah,
that's true. That's true. But Maya being a member of the ARO community, sort of.
Yeah, she's tangentially related to us. Join us, Maya.
She's in it. One of us.
I was just thinking that.
But this is what allyship looks like. It's really what allyship looks like. It's people willing to say the thing. People that are willing to, first of all, listen and then speak. And Jay, my brother, I love you.
We appreciate you. Mm-hmm.
So anyway, it's and I also I typed in the side chat. It's like my last biology class was 50 years ago, right? And Dawkins taught his last biology class 20 years ago. You know what? There's been a lot learned in those years. And I wish that folks as they age would keep their ears open and their minds open and would listen and would roll with the changes, because the calcification in thought is just as bad as hardening of the arteries. Only if your calcification in thought leads other people to turn their hearts to cement, you're doing something wrong.
Right. As I often say, what is our advocacy for? Whether it's secular advocacy, church-state separation, even religion. What is the point of any of it if not to better human lives? Once you deviate from that objective, you're doing it wrong. You're no longer serving the goal you signed up for in the first place.
And I would also reiterate what I said earlier, that if you're going to wade into issues around human rights, you really ought to engage with the communities whose issues you may not understand as well as you should, before you open the door to the discourse. I agree with Jay that FFRF made a bad mistake here. but I think they did it out of ignorance. I'm hoping they did. I mean, that's my point of view, and I've seen this with other organizations as well. People will walk into these issues without knowing what they're doing. And it must be my cultural Christianity that says, "Forgive them, Lord, they know not what they do." But sometimes, when they know not what they do, people that they don't want to see crucified get crucified.
Well, I mean, we don't have to be an appeal to religion.
You really ought to fucking pay attention before you hurt people.
You don't even really have to appeal to religion there. I mean, that's Hanlon's razor, right? Never attribute to malice what can be chalked up to ignorance.
Yeah, but unfortunately, in many circumstances, the people who bring this to the attention of the people, and it's human nature. It's like nobody wants to be wrong. I certainly don't like to being wrong, and I've been wrong plenty of times. People tend to resent it and get back on their haunches and react poorly. I wish we had like upon reflection, here's what we'd like to do from FFRF. I said I didn't want to make this a hit piece, but come on, guys, think about it.
All right. Well, Ember, you sticking around for the end then? We got some sports coming up.
I'm up past my bedtime. I'm already turning into a pumpkin.
Great.
And
great job,
Ember,
great job on that, Ember.
Thank you.
Ember, she spent a lot of time seeking out the interviews. I'd call you Jimmy Olsen, but I wouldn't want to.
I cosplayed him once.
But such a great job. Thank you so much for all the work you've done.
Can I be like, I want pictures of Spider-Man? That's not
right.
Wrong guy.
That's actually what I was doing.
Okay, Jay Jonah. Okay.
I'll be Jay Jonah of the Transpositions.
Well, but I will say it was good to see that it was handled in a swift manner. It was handled in a definitive manner. Now we see what happens next. Because I
have their board meeting.
And by the way, I like and Ember, I love the shout out. I appreciated the shout out.
Absolutely. Journalistic integrity is about being as fair as you can, but also I was trying to get as many perspectives in there as I reasonably could. And it's important to remember this isn't an atheist issue. It's a human issue.
Yep. And I didn't realize I was working with three atheists.
I mean,
I'm actually so I don't consider myself an atheist, but I mean, there's no gods in my belief system, so maybe I am an atheist.
I'm in the Maya pantheon that you can't be an atheist if you actually are a goddess.
Well, that's another way.
Well, that is true.
Well, that is another way. No, but overall, the point is, though, we're all coming from different we're all coming from different traditions. We're all coming from different modes of being, modes of belief or not belief. But I will say this, as a believer, if the atheists are siding with our enemies, we're in deep trouble.
Exactly.
I mean, that's my feeling on it, because, I mean, my viewpoint on all of this in one way or another is, one thing I understand what I believe and why I believe it, but I also understand that my faith has been complicit in some of the most ugly, foul things that have been done in human history. And I really don't believe that you can truly call yourself a person of faith if you aren't willing to grapple with that. If you aren't willing to really grapple with that, look at that, and challenge it. And challenge it strongly. And that's one thing I do respect about what the FRF did, is that they challenged it. Is that, now granted, they goofed up by, first, you don't get, never give a transphobe a platform. I'm a believer in the concept of protest and deny. Protest their presence everywhere, deny them a platform everywhere. Because in my mind, bigotry is not another opinion. And that's what this really comes back to. The concept that bigotry is another opinion. That's what's getting us in trouble in so many issues, is that we aren't willing to truly be intolerant. We're willing to tell you, if you're, the only way that you can actually effectively have tolerance is you can't tolerate intolerance. You can't do it. And you have to stop placating the bigots and say, well, they have a point. No, they don't have a point. Ember?
So Arden brought up the paradox of tolerance earlier on Takis over on the line.
Yep.
There's a simpler way to do that. Tolerance is for people, not ideas. Not for things. It's for people. You don't have to go through that whole thing of, well, you have to not tolerate intolerance in order to be... It's a jumble of words. I mean, yes, it's true, but it's a jumble of words. Much easier to just say tolerance is for people, not things.
Correct.
And it's definitely not for bigots but there's some people you can't be tolerant of, like J.K. Rowling, for example, because this past weekend, there are no trans kids.
I got that right here, Karleigh. If you didn't cover it in the show, we can pop it up real quick. I got it right here. I did have stuff set out. I just didn't know how much with as much of this Jerry Coyne stuff that's been going on. I didn't know how much we get into this. Yeah. Oh, that's not the right one. Hold on.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's
more
I'm sorry.
nonsense
I
from the
wish
GOP.
I wish my eyes did not have to see that, because, marquee fight. This is the problem. This is a big problem. It's become a marquee fight, and too many of us, and Art and I were talking about this as well. I don't know if we did it on stream, but no, we did. I actually during one call said, we fall into using the right-wing framing and the terms around ourselves, even of the terms that the right wing provides us to describe ourselves. Let's stop doing that. Let's shift the debate. I mean, we're smart, but we shouldn't get gulled into using their language to address their issues.
No. This is what Karleigh was referring to with J.K. Rowling, though. I had this earlier, but sometimes I feel like we give her too much press. In her Scottish castle, let her build her own press. Because why should we care what media? Why should we care what she says?
Well,
why should we care what this woman says?
Yeah, but look at the headline. Look at the way the media is framing it.
My existence right here.
Controversial remarks sparks debate. So all of a sudden, our humanity is up for debate. This is what I mean about the framing, and we should reject that out of hand. Our lives are not up for fucking debate.
And my existence right here on this freaking stage is absolute proof that trans kids exist, because I was a fucking trans kid.
So was I.
So was I.
So there we go. We settled the debate.
Yeah.
But that's not what Rowling. That's not what Rowling was actually after.
Yeah.
As Aaron in the Morning, whom we frequently reference because her journalism is fucking incredible, pointed out, in Rowling's case, it seems to be a statement of a goal rather than a statement of an observation.
No, they want to make it a debate. They want to make our existence a matter of debate. And And if those are the terms of the debate, I reject the framing entirely. I'm going to operate outside of that framing, and I'm going to operate within the framing of my existence. And if that means that my existence is terminated, well, my existence is going to be terminated sooner rather than later, sooner than all y'all, I hope. But I've got no control over that. What I do have control over are the terms upon which I will engage my existence. I'll ask you to look at me. I'll ask you to speak with me. I'll ask you to understand me. And if you can't do that, then I'll have to just say, we're not there, folks. What's wrong with you when you can't look at another human being and at least try to figure it out?
All right, y'all ready for some sports?
I am. Let's go.
Let's shift gears here. Here we go. I'm going to kick it this time, Karleigh.
Hello again, everybody. This is Transposition Sports, the first for 2025. I'm Karleigh Chardonnay-Webb. And right up front, a friend of the show and someone we really like, Sadie Schreiner, sprinter at Rochester Institute of Technology, on the short list of contenders in NCAA Division III at 200 and 400 meters in both indoor and outdoor track this season, talked about a piece of her truth, and some people didn't like it. On Monday, she came out with a video talking about her adventures in the transfer portal as she was looking for opportunities in Division I. How much resistance she got. Let's take a look.
My name is Sadie Schreiner. I'm a trans athlete in the NCAA, one of 10, and I'm a 2-time All-American. I want to take this time to talk about my experience trying to transfer into Division I. After entering the transfer portal, it quickly became clear that I'm on all the hurdles transfers usually have. There is an extra layer because I was trans. 50% of the country banned me from participating, and that meant that I couldn't attend any of those colleges, even if they reached out to me with full rides. It also became clear that in the states that did, no matter how adamant the coaches were to have me on their teams, the college administrations would usually stop them from allowing me to participate. So I took the time to document all of it. Trans people are actively getting attacked right now, and our rights are getting stripped away. And those in power are either endorsing this, or they're just letting it happen. But we're not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. And I'm sure come this January, you'll see me again competing on the track.
Schreiner's discussed her future ambitions on this forum. In our interview with her in May, she talked about wanting to take a shot at the Olympics sometime in the next 8 years, and that perhaps making this move can be a pathway to it. Now, let's take a look at the chart she showed in her video, because it's going to tell a very interesting tale of its own. 42 Division I schools that she either contacted or they contacted her. 24 of those she sent emails to. 11 of those responded back positively. Now, 18 schools saw her name in the transfer portal, looked up her times, looked up her stats, and they said, Ms. Schreiner, we got our eye on you, let's talk. Then here's where it gets real interesting and perhaps a little bit funky. 3 schools offered her full ride scholarship. Now that's interesting. In these times of NCAA roster caps and less money to go around supposedly, unless you play football or basketball, such things are relatively unheard of. If someone's offering you money, it means you've done something right. And as we saw last season, Sadie Schreiner's done a lot right. Now, 17 schools had to tap out of the process entirely because those schools are in one of the 26 states where transgender women and girls competing with cisgender women and girls in athletics is against the law. So those schools had to be out of it. Now, there were 10 schools where we're in states where trans people aren't criminalized. The coaches liked Sadie, they liked what she could bring to the table, but then when they got floated up the chain of command of the school's administration, somebody looked at the specter of Riley Gaines showing up on their campus and said, no, sorry, we can't help you on this one. Now, there's precedence for that. In a number of articles during the whole debacle over the San Jose State volleyball crisis, a number of athletic departments and school administrators from a number of colleges all basically said the same thing. We just don't have the infrastructure to deal with this. We don't have a playbook for this. We don't know what to do. And one of the people that have heard these things at length is Dr. Jen Fry. Now, Jen Fry, another friend of the show, noted equity consultant to colleges on college athletics, she says that those concerns are very real ones. Let's say a school calls you based on this.
Okay.
And they say, Dr. Jen, we don't want this situation at our school. What do we put in place?
Oh my God. I mean, you're asking for like a semester, of years of like policy to put in there. And I think like the thing you're asking, it's not black and white. It depends on the state. If it's Oklahoma asking me versus California versus Florida versus New York, like is it private? Is it public? Is it religious? Like there's so many nuances to it. It would be, I couldn't give you an answer because there's so many different layers to it.
No matter where Schreiner ends up, she says she's going to compete. We at Transposition Sports are going to follow her story all the way to nationals, no matter what uniform she's in. And by the way, congratulations, Sadie Schreiner. You're a member of the 2024 All-Karleigh team, alongside Valentina Petrillo, who in fact is one of our honorary captains, along with Nikki Hilt. You couldn't keep them off the team. You couldn't keep them off the team. And also alongside our honorary cis captain, Caitlin Clark, Alona Maher, and Travis Hunter. Other people made it include, Merrick McHenry. He had to make it. Chuck Aoki from U.S. Wheelchair Rugby. I mean, have you seen him? Have you seen his social media presence? That guy is fire. I love him. And I think you will too. Wendy Miller, softball player extraordinaire. You've made the All-Karleigh team. Also, the entire Connecticut Ambush team. Thank you for letting me be a part of it last year. I'm looking forward to having more fun with you all this season as well. And there's a couple high school kids. Aiden Gallagher from Oregon, Veronica Garcia from Washington, both trans girls who are fast, took a lot of heat, won state champions, kept their chins up. Congratulations. And the honorary coaching staff of the All-Karleigh team, Anthony Nicodemo and the Angry Gay Grandpa. The last selection, Angry Gay Grandpa, why is he on the team? Check this out, and grab a tissue.
So maybe I'll start a little bit softer.
This little light of mine.
Dad?
Before you say anything, I just want to apologize for what I said this morning. I've been doing a lot of thinking. If you want to change your name, if you want to wear a dress.
It's a skirt, Dad.
Skirt? I don't know the kind of support you need, but let's get you some for all this transgender stuff.
Wait. Are you serious? Dad, what is this?
Oh, this is me supporting you. This is me saying I love you. This is me not losing you.
Love you, Dad.
Love you. Holly.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine.
As we head into this new year, I want to talk not about resolutions, but of a manifesto. And two names come up when I think about this. I think about Aidan Gallagher and what she went through as a high school kid getting booed, and Veronica Garcia for going through the same thing. Last week on TransPositions Sports, we talked about another piece of the fallout from Garcia, who's now a senior at East Valley High School, Spokane, Washington, for her winning a state championship. And now that fallout has come in the form of a group of districts who now want to put up a Veronica Garcia rule. There's two proposals going up to the WIAA to be looked at and possibly voted on in the first part of 2025. One calls for a total ban on transgender girls and girls' high school sports. And there's another proposal that calls for an open category. Now, they haven't defined what this looks like. Some people reported it to be, oh, they're going to give the trans kids their own division. That's not going to happen, I can tell you that right now. What most likely it's going to be is a de facto boys division. But one of the architects of this proposal says it's about dignity.
We want our transgender student athletes in relationship and community. We also want opportunities for our female athletes.
Now, the man you just saw in the video is the superintendent at Linden High Schools. Now, we also went through this last week. Remember, Linden finished third in the Class 2A girls overall standings in state track last year. Cedar Crest finished second, and their head coach is currently allowing himself to be quoted at length by the Independent Women's Forum, an anti-LGBTQ advocacy group of conservatives. So, really, I think it's accurate to call this a Veronica Garcia rule. Oh, by the way, what does Veronica have to say about it? Let's take a look.
Yeah, what they want to instead do is target children, like literal children. Like, it's like, why do grown adults think it's okay to harass a child, let alone a transgender child? Like, why would you ever do that? Already transgender youth are feeling unwelcome in sports. You know, the point of high school teams to feel like you belong to something, and stuff like this is going to really negatively impact the mental health of transgender people.
As I see this story play out, and Aidan Gallagher's story play out, and seeing what Sadie Schreiner talked about earlier, it leads me to the manifesto for 2025. We at TransPositions Sports are going to continue to do what we've done this year and do it even more, which is give you the untold stories from our perspectives and give you a conduit to the voices that aren't heard in a lot of media on these issues. Personally, I'm sick and tired of having mainstream media outlets talk about this issue and other trans issues and talk to no trans people. That's why I'm glad to give voice to those who aren't heard and need to be heard, because these policy decisions, these changes, these disputes affect them directly. But one thing we're not going to do in 2025 is center the debate so much. Instead, we're going to do more to center the voices and center the joy. Because frankly, I'm tired of the debate. I'm tired of hearing about fairness from people who are not centering anyone's fairness, but centering their own discomfort and calling it fairness. You know what I'm talking about. Think about it. It's the Frankie De La Creta question. Fairness for whom? Whose fairness is centered in this moment? It's certainly not mine. It's not Haley Davidson's. It's not Sadie Schreiner's. It's not Pat Manuel's. It's not the fairness for Aiden Gallagher or any other trans kid in any high school in this country right now, no matter if the state turned blue or turned red at the last election. I want to know where Sadie Schreiner's fairness is. Where's the fairness in the fact that Sadie Schreiner's told, we're interested in you, but we're not going to fight for you, so we can't have you as a part of our school? Where's the fairness in that? Seriously. Where's the fairness in the fact that a school is openly saying, we're more afraid of Riley Gaines than we are excited for you to come to our school? Where's the fairness in that? And it is in every school. When CC Telfer were making her run, Franklin Pierce University were putting contingency plans in place to keep her safe. Remember Megan Cortez, swimmer at Ramapo College, New Jersey, when all the professional trans folks were trying to come at her over a school record? I got to give Ramapo College some credit. They didn't wait, hem and haw, and make a statement 2 months after the fact. They made a statement at the point of attack and said, we're following NCAA regulations. We back our kid. She's eligible. She's our student athlete. Leave her alone. I respect that. It's a far cry from the way the University of Pennsylvania and the Ivy League and the NCAA left Leah Thomas twisting in the wind. I haven't forgotten, and neither should anyone else. And I don't want to hear that word safety either, because I already know my safety, sure the hell isn't centered in this. In fact, there's a number of people who have threatened, for example, to come down to the stands and pummel Veronica Garcia or get violent with Aiden Gallagher. The threats were so heavy that Aiden Gallagher needed bodyguards with her when she was at state last year to go accept the medal she earned. They had to tell her, no, you get off the track immediately. We're going to guard you, because the crowd got so hostile. Remember, she got booed. And yes, we have receipts on this. Sadie Schreiner at Indoor Nationals last year was being heckled by people yelling and calling her a man. You don't believe me? Roll the tape.
He's a man! That's a man! That's a man cheating man!
And you heard it here on our interview with CC Telfer when CC talked about when they literally had to stop a race at a national championship because somebody was throwing anti-trans slurs at her from the stands.
For my indoor national championship, my first one, I was on the line and they had to stop the race because a parent said something out in the audience before the gun went off, and I was right next to the stand. That had no railing, that had no boundaries or anything. That parents could have done they had to stop the race and tell the girls to stand up, and then they had to address that parent in front of us, and then tell us to get back into the starting blocks and then go run the race. Or go execute the race. You kidding me? Are you kidding me? My life was threatened 5 seconds ago and you want me to finish this race?
Don't give me this about safety. There are some people that hate trans people so much that they have a fantasy of taking a bunch of trans women who play sports, plop them down in the middle of some Roman Colosseum from Antiquity, have a full stance full of people giving them thumbs down, and then sending out some very violent cisgender men to go pummel them senseless. And there are people that actually think about that, and they verbalize that, and they put it out there in the universe.
The NCAA is a perverted organization. They platformed a biological male who won a national championship and then was allowed in incredibly disturbing detail to be around you and your fellow competitors. And again, I blame the decline of American men. This never should have been, someone should have just took care of it the way we used to take care of things in the 1950s or 60s.
So I don't want to hear about safety because I know whose safety is centered in that moment. So no, I'm not going to center the debate, and I'm not going to give in to the cries of people who are acting and speaking in bad faith, telling me you've got to look at both sides. What both sides is there of Pat Manuel hitting you with a good right cross? There's no both sides of that. He throws a good punch, you're on the canvas. There's no both sides to that. There's no debate about that. There's no debate about Sadie Schreiner powering down the final straight after pushing for 300 meters and propelling herself to a win. That happens. That's the facts. There's no both sides to that. So don't come at me about both sides, about just someone being good and playing in their sport. Because we already know what side that you want centered. And it isn't the side of anyone who's trans. Plus, there's plenty of outlets that let you have your side, whatever that means to you. There's plenty of outlets that platform professional transphobia. This one will not. I'd rather platform the joy. Like Ember, I like giving the good news. So we're going to keep giving the good news and keep telling the untold and keep giving voice to those whose voices aren't heard and presenting them to you. I've been proud to do it for 5 years at Outsports. I've been proud to do it for this last near year here at TransPositions Sports. And I'm going to keep doing it happily with a big smile on my face for many years to come. Also, a quick note to our athletes, or rather a quick note to our allies. You know something? Let's stop saying trans athletes when we know we mean trans women and girls. You know what? If we're talking about trans women and girls, it's okay to say those words together. Stop misgendering trans people, please. And while we're at it, can we stop erasing trans men in this discourse? Let's talk about them. There are trans men who play sports. In fact, the majority of high school athletes who are trans in this country are transgender boys. But we don't want to talk about that because it doesn't sell the narrative. So let's quit trying to fight on the narrative and let's just spread the joy. Let's give voice to the voiceless. Also, one more thing. If a person refers to a transgender woman as a biological male or a transgender man as a biological female, understand that that person's a transphobe, and please let's start treating them as such. I'd appreciate it, and so would a lot of others. And the last note to fellow trans people out in the world, especially those who love sports and who play sports. Yeah, I know. You're scared. I'm scared too. Only a fool wouldn't be scared in these times. With the rhetoric and the rancor that we're hearing, our heads are on a swivel even more. But understand, as Sadie said in her video, we're still here, we're still going to be here, and we're still going to hit the field and play hard. Understand, we're all we got, but you know something? We're all we need. Happy New Year, everyone. For TransPositions Sports, I'm Karleigh Chardonnay Webb.
All right, team. 2 hours just flew by tonight. Tell you what,
been a hell of a ride. Hey, I just want to throw just a little thing out there. The regulations in sport didn't come out of nowhere. They came out of years of study. They came out of years of studies. I've made reference to this before. I'll do it again. There was the Canadian Center for Ethics in Sport did a study of the performance of trans women at the elite level. A study of studies, a meta-study, if you will, of every single piece of literature between 2011 and 2021 inclusive, studying this issue, covering issues of VO2 levels, covering studies of strength, covering issues of things that matter in athletic competition. The vast preponderance of the evidence is that for trans athletes, male and female, when there is medical transition involved, the person who moves into their acquired gender, acquired sex, if you will. Okay, I'm going to get transmedicalist about it a little. The parity between trans men and men, trans women and cis women, trans men and cis men, trans women and cis women is there. Medically, scientifically, it's there. What we're dealing with is unscientific bullshit and superstitious belief that medical transition does nothing. It does. That's so fucking crazy. Because if medical transition did nothing, then nobody would do it.
You know, I actually read that on Twitter. Way
It's
back in the day.
insane.
Someone making that argument. It's like, yeah, it's too late. Once you go on to puberty, you can't do any. It doesn't do any. HRT doesn't do anything or whatever. It's like, oh yeah.
Well, it's
really.
It's
sorry.
literally unscientific. Within 6 months of medical therapy, one's bloodstream gets to the point where you carry the same amount of oxygen as your acquired gender. You can't tell me that's not biological. And so when we get into discussions of biology, and this is why I appreciate somebody like Jay Bundy, who knows this. And why I don't appreciate the opinions of people like Jerry Coyne. If you knew the biology, if you knew the studies, if you actually read the all of the stuff that we've amassed over at the Discord, if you understood this, you would understand that sports organizations have in fact dealt with the best medical information and have made their determinations on eligibility concurrent with those findings. It is absolutely stupid. And there's no way that any of us here are going to stop a crowd from booing. But what we can do is ask those medical institutions to speak up a little more loudly on our behalf.
Ember had that thing that run. All those medical organizations are there in support of this very, very small minority group. So yeah, be loud.
Although I will say this, it would be nice if it'd be nice that if you're in the stands and you're seeing people boo a high school kid,
tell them to shut the fuck up.
I agree with that. I say exactly that, because that's what needs to start happening. I'm going to say this, and I know this may not be the best energy, but Stephanie, I'm with you on the fact that what needs to happen once in a while is some of these mama bears and dragon dead, some of these parents of trans kids, when somebody is trying to harass your kid, drop them like a 3-foot putt. I think we need to start telling parents, look, you go to the wall for your kids against some of these people, because believe me, you have a governor-elect of a state in this country who literally called a 13-year-old girl a hulking male. Now, yes, Patrick Morrissey in West Virginia, I'm talking to you because you said that. And anyone who doesn't believe that he said it, I've got receipts. No, just another thing to remember about Karleigh Webb. I got receipts. We've been running those receipts on this show throughout the last year.
I just want to make clear that the TransPositions does not condone acts of violence against anyone. So,
no, that's not violence.
No, of course not.
You said drop them like I was just want to make clear. We're being metaphoric, like in Minecraft.
No, well, I see it like this. I call that protecting youth, protecting trans.
Oh yeah, if someone's harassing your kid,
to me,
defend your child.
To me, no, but understand that you have people who literally are going on. I'm afraid of somebody actually acting on what CC Telfer talked about in the piece. I'm afraid of somebody actually coming down on the stands and trying to rough up, say, a Veronica Garcia. That scares me. That scares me and that frightens me. And to me, protecting the young people, that's self-defense. I mean, protecting the young folks, because we now have a political moment in this country where literally people are emboldened to act a damn fool. That's what we have in America now.
Let me share a little something.
Yeah.
After the election, I like all of us. I mean, it was like the Thursday after the election, we were all like totally burned out. We just couldn't do it, right? It's like no. We got a poll on the line. It said, what's your consumption of media stuff, and after the election, and it was sort of a tie between about the same and less. And I was definitely on the less side because I just couldn't take it. It's like, nope, I need a little bit of mental health break here. But after the election, people became empowered. Like the phobes became empowered. I'd never, in screening calls for the line, I'd never heard as much resistance when I go, here's my pattern. Hi, this is Stephanie Helms. I'm screening calls for Forrest and John tonight. May I know who I'm speaking to and what are your pronouns? And the number of people that balked at the pronouns question skyrocketed. I
That doesn't
don't
necessarily
go by pronouns. I don't believe in pronouns. It's like, are you fucking
Then you failed. Then you failed
I
grade
don't
school
believe in
English.
parts of speech. Okay. Good for you. I mean, I guess that's good. I guess that's okay. And what I would put, you know, what you do is you put a little note for the people on the screen as to who's calling, and you know, somebody would say, I'm a man. So I would put in the man. It's like, okay, and let the host deal with it. I mean, it's like, what the fuck? Really? You know, it's like you're challenging me. You want to get on and talk to 1,000 people, and you want to start off the conversation announcing you're a dick. Bully for you. Have fun. You know, I believe in anti-nouns. It's like, what are you talking about?
Well, and just to let everybody know out there, we are going to be taking calls soon at the end of the show. These call-in shows. This last half an hour, we run 2 hours of the show, and the last half an hour we'll do calls about the subject matter. We just didn't have time tonight. There was so much on the plate, so we would decide not to start it tonight. But that is coming, and then we're going to try to maybe do a full call-in show, maybe once a month. I don't know how often we're going to do it yet, but
we'll
you can actually call in and talk to your favorite host at the TransPositions. So yeah, we got that coming up too. I don't know what's going to happen next week. We're going to probably have some follow-up on the Jerry Coyne situation. We're probably going to have lots of 2025 news coming at you. This year is going to be a mess. So stick with us. Hit the little thing, bell thing twice so that it lights up, because we are bringing you like cutting edge, like we are our finger on the pulse all the time of what's going on this on the forefront, you know. So please subscribe
for all of the
share.
for all the people that we that came over here tonight and found us. Oh my, what a great fan! Holy smokes!
Got it for Christmas.
Yeah. And for all you folks who found us tonight, you know, stick with us, because we're trying to do our best. Let us know what we're doing well and what we're doing poorly. We really committed to bringing you this program every week, as long as they'll let us, and we love you. Thanks so much for being here.
See you next week.
Bye. Oh, I guess that means I got to hit the button, right?